Hey guys, today we are going to talk about case studies and how to complete a case study for a client. So you're going to actually go through some information about a client and take them all the way through the case study until you complete it and have a complete flexibility program for that individual. Okay, so we're going to go through an entire example. I'm going to do two different screencasts. So one will take you through a dynamic warm-up, and then the next one will continue on with the stretching program. So let's talk a little bit about our case study or our example. So we have Sarah. Here's our overview of Sarah. She's a 25-year-old female who works as a paralegal. She's seated at her desk most of the day and tends to notice some tightness in her neck and shoulders from all the typing and computer work she performs. Sarah is required to dress professionally for work and oftentimes will wear high heels. So some key information that we're going to take from that top part is she's a 25-year-old female. She sits a lot for work and notices tightness in her neck and shoulders. So we're going to pay attention to that kind of syndrome X, that forward roll of the shoulders and head protruding forward. We read about that in one of your modules recently, so paying attention to that. And then she also wears high heels to work, so we're going to pay special attention to her calves, noting that she probably has tight calves from them constantly being in that shortened position from wearing high heels. Our exercise and health information for Sarah. She has no known health issues, and she currently walks her dog every day for about 20 minutes at a moderate pace. Sarah also takes a 30-minute strength training group exercise class twice a week. However, no stretching is included in the class. She does not stretch on her own either. Sarah has a BMI of 23 and is happy with her overall appearance. She is concerned about the tightness in her neck and shoulders and feels that a stretching program of some sort would be beneficial to her. She does not have any time restrictions, but would like to continue her current routine of taking her group exercise class and walking her dog. So some key areas to note in there. She has no known health issues. She's a fairly active individual, and she already takes a group exercise class. So we know that she's okay in a group setting. So it might be something to kind of think about giving her a yoga class once a week if that was something that would benefit her. Since she already is open to taking group exercise classes for her strength training program. And, she really doesn't have any time constraints, so starting her off on a stretching program right now sounds like an ideal thing. So our testing information. So we took Sarah through the NASM overhead squat assessment, and we found that her arms fall forward and she has excessive forward lean. So we are going to want to pay special attention to our client with those tight areas that correspond to those muscle groups. So arms falling forward, you would just go back to your NASM overhead squat assessment compensation sheet, just like we did when we did the overhead squat assignment, and find out which muscles are associated with that. So for arms falling forward, it's going to be her pecs, her lats, and her teres major. And then excessive forward lean is going to be her calf muscle, so her soleus, her gastroc, her hip flexors, and her abdominal complex. And then for the program, now that you have all the necessary information about Sarah, we're going to design her a flexibility program. The program must include the following. So these are the assignment details that I'm giving you. I need you to follow ACSM guidelines. Include a 6-exercise dynamic warm-up that's appropriate based on her tight areas. We're going to include stretches for all her tight areas and try to use at least one stretch from each of the other 3 remaining groups, so SMR, PNF, and static. So we're going to ideally design about 8 exercises for her, 8 stretching exercises for her. But we're going to use a variety of SMR, PNF, and static in order to do that. And then we're going to include any other type of mind-body exercises that we think would benefit Sarah. So what we're going to do is in your module, you guys have a Fit for Stretching document. So everything that I've noted here in red is what I filled out specifically for this client to use as an example. You will be given everything in black, so that the document will just be the black part that is shown, and then you guys can go ahead and fill that in. So for our client name was Sarah. Here we have our NASM overhead squat assessment results. This should look really familiar to you because it is exactly the same as what you used for the NASM overhead squat assessment. So we have arms falling forward was her first compensation, and we noted latissimus dorsi, teres major, and pectoralis major and minor were those overactive or tight areas. Okay, and again, that's just found on your overhead squat assessment compensation sheet. Her other NASM overhead squat assessment compensation that we saw was excessive forward lean. So again, soleus gastrocnemius, so those are going to be her two calf muscles, and then hip flexor complex and abdominal complex are going to be those areas that we're going to focus on. And one thing that I always like to do is right here also is to note anything that the client is having tightness in. So this client specifically said she has tightness in her neck and shoulders. So this is important for us to note, because as we work our way through the program, we want to make sure we hit not only all major muscle groups, but also pay special attention to those tight muscle groups. So I always like to note it here just to make sure I double check on that. As you continue down, you'll notice the ACSM guidelines. And so we want to make sure that we follow ACSM guidelines. Sometimes it's a little bit hard to fill out this chart until you actually get into designing the program. So what I like to do is to start designing the program and then continue to scroll back up and fill in this part of the chart. So let's just talk a little bit about our frequency for Sarah. I think that's an easy one to kind of get a grasp on before you start designing the program. So we know that this client, she's currently not exercising, or she exercises twice a week with her strength training program, with her group exercise class, but she's not currently stretching. So one thing I would like to start her off with is on the lower end of the stretching requirements. So ACSM recommends 2 to 3 days a week. Ideally, daily is the best. Since she's already doing 2 days a week of her strength training program, it would be really easy for this client to add in those extra 2 days. She's already warmed up, she's already strength training, so if we can just have her do some stretches at the end of her workout, that would be ideal. And since I know she's already open to group exercise classes, I'm going to add in another day of hopefully her taking maybe a yoga class as well. So for this client, I said I think a good frequency would be 3 days a week. So that specifically is 2 days a week of her stretching program and 1 day a week of the yoga. Now, as we work through case studies, you'll notice that there are several correct answers, and nobody's group exercise or nobody's flexibility program that they design for a client is going to look exactly the same. All of them that you turn in are going to be a little bit different. Everyone's going to pick and choose some stretches or a dynamic warm-up, or everything's going to look a little bit different than your classmates, which is great. That's the beauty of it, is that there are several right answers. There are also some incorrect answers, though. So if you would have told me that you're going to start Sarah off with a stretching program 5, 6, or 7 days a week, that's way too many for this client, right? She's just starting out. She's currently not doing any stretching. So let's give her the lower end of the stretching program, okay? So make sure you're kind of within those ACSM guidelines, okay? And as I said, I really like to fill this out as I design the program to kind of come back. So we'll keep coming back to this as we go, but I think the frequency or number of days a week that you're going to have the client stretch is something that you can kind of hit on right off the bat, okay? The next thing I asked you to do was to design a dynamic stretching program that was at least 6 exercises for this client. So for Sarah, the exercises that I chose were jumping jacks for 30 seconds, high knees for 30 seconds, arm swings for 30 seconds, lateral lunges for 30 seconds, a forward lunge with rotation for 30 seconds, and neck rolls for 30 seconds. Since all of these, doing them one time, 30 seconds apiece, 6 exercises, would only add up to being 3 minutes long, I'm going to have her do this entire dynamic, these entire 6 dynamic exercises 2 times in order so she meets the dynamic warm-up requirements of being 5 to 8 minutes. Okay, so if she completes it twice, it'll be a total of 6 minutes. It, again, would be perfectly fine for you to say, I'm going to have her do 1 minute of jumping jacks, 1 minute of high knees, 1 minute of arm swings, 1 minute of lateral lunges, 1 minute of a forward lunge with a rotation, and 1 minute of neck rolls. Then your client's hitting 6 minutes, right? Just want that program to be somewhere between 5 and 8 minutes. And again, everyone's dynamic program is going to look different. You could have picked totally different exercises. You could have picked burpees and Frankenstein walks and arm circles and maybe an active cat-cow exercise. You could have picked a lateral shuffle or a side shuffle. You could have picked karaoke. So a variety of stretches, a variety of dynamic warm-ups. Nobody's dynamic warm-up program is going to look exactly the same. These just happen to be the 6 that I think would be great for Sarah, right? So that's how you're going to get started with your flexibility program. In the next screencast, I'm going to talk about the stretches that I gave the client and how to set that up.